Hello and welcome to the Valley Sports Telegram Basketball Roundup. We're a few weeks into the league season, and we're excited to kind of break this baby down and let you guys know where everyone stands, what we kind of see is going on in these leagues, and give you a bit of a primer as we come into the stretch run, as a couple of these races are wide open and looks like a couple are locked down already. Uh, we're like I said, we're excited, and we're just going to kind of roll right into it. I'll start, Kenny. Your thoughts so far into this season?
I think that in the city section, we have seen some good basketball on both sides. A few of the leagues are a little bit top heavy, but there's good competition on the girl side and the boy side in the city section and in the southern section as well. We have a couple of really strong leagues in the southern section, but the action's been fast and furious, and there's still a lot more to come.
Yeah, there's a lot more to come, like you said. So we're going to start. We'll break down each league, city section wise, and kind of give you a primer as far as where they stand, and then we will roll into our impressions of what's going on. We're starting the West Valley League on the boys' side. This is still a pretty tight league. Birmingham is 4-0 in league. They just beat Taft in an overtime game that went down to the wire. They're 14-6 overall. They seem to have a lock on an open division slot. Taft 12-10 overall and 3-1 in league. And again, that loss was just last week to Birmingham. And then El Camino and Cleveland are both 2-2 in league. They both have losing records, but you look at that, that's probably the competition they've been facing. I don't think anybody in the West Valley League ever schedules kind of walkover opponents if they can help it. They got to get ready for the gauntlet that is league. El Camino is 6-14, and Cleveland is 8-13 overall. Granada Hills is 6-14 overall, and they're 1-3 in league. And then the Chatsworth boys are 5-17 and 0-4 in league. And their lone bright spot so far seems to be Elijah Arenas. We'll dig more into that as we go. Sticking with the boys, over in the East Valley League, Grant is running away. They're 14-9 overall, and they're 8-0 in league. One thing that stands out in their schedule is they lost a very close game to Birmingham. From when we're recording this, just last week. It was a 3-point finish. So that actually bodes kind of well for their prospects moving forward. Arleta has found itself jumping into second place. They're 14-9 overall, 6-2 in league. Verdugo Hills seems to be in a mini transition year. They're very young. They're 10-12 overall, 5-2 in league. North Hollywood seems to be in a similar position, but they're 14-10 overall, 4-4 in league play. And then as we come down, Pauley's 9-14, 3-4. Chavez is 10-13, and they're 1-7. And then down the bottom, Monroe is 3-14 and 0-8. It's kind of a rough run from them for those three teams down on the bottom. But you can only hope they keep grinding away and something good will come out. If not this season, you got kids looking up for the next few years. And then the Valley Mission League is also shaping up to be a dogfight. Kennedy is 13-11, 7-1 in league. Cadoga is 12-8, also 7-1 in league. And then Silmar is 11-13, and they're 6-2 in league. And this could be a 3-team race over the next 10 days or so. They're going to play each other, and if it turns out to be like a game of rock, paper, scissors, one beats the other, this could be a very tight finish as we come into the end. Finishing it out, Van Nuys is 5-14, 3-4 in league. San Fernando is 3-20 overall, 3-5 in league. Panorama is 5-14 and 1-7, and Reseda is 3-10 and 0-7. before I throw it over to Kenny to give his thoughts on the boys' side, I just got to say the hardest part of putting this all together as we've been watching everything unfold is as a smaller staff, we're trying to get to as many of these games as possible. We can't get to everyone. And so we're using whatever resources we have at our disposal. And a lot of these boys teams are not giving us anything to work with. You know, you guys, we're trying to spotlight you kids up, put a line on them, let everybody know they're here, they're doing good things in the valley. So you're watching, start giving us some meat because we want to break all this down and want to go in depth. But I'll throw it over to Kenny.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of that, yeah, that would help us a lot. I know for a lot of people have seen me around. I'm in these gyms just about damn near every day, trying to get eyes on as many of these teams as I can, because with a lack of stats, you kind of have to go on what you know and what you've seen. And if I could split myself like an amoeba in three ways and send myself to multiple games that are going on at the same time, I would, but you can't. So, it would really help if we can get those stats up and update your max preps and your SB lives when you can. And that would really help us journalists out when we're trying to spotlight and put shine on your kids. As far as my thoughts on the big three leagues, yes, they appear to be a little bit top heavy, with some teams kind of maybe on the rise. A few of these teams in these leagues are a little younger, but it's going to be interesting down the stretch, especially in the Valley Mission and in the West Valley. You've got a gauntlet at the top with Birmingham and Taft. If you were there for that game Friday night, you know just how close in tit for tat these two teams are. They're going to see each other again. It's probably, for my money, it'd probably go the other way. And then it's just going to be a matter of who can kind of finish out the regular season the best between Birmingham and Taft. And in the Valley Mission, it's a 3-horse race. I personally think that Sylmar might be a step below Kennedy and Canoga, but it's still anybody's ball game in the Valley Mission. And then the East Valley, it's Grant's league to lose. That team has been awesome all year. They've scheduled tough opponents in non-league, which has really kind of helped them when they got back into the East Valley, really put a hurting on their opponents when they got back into league play. And I think Grant's probably is going to be tough. But I will say this in the East Valley, keep your eye on Arleta and North Hollywood going down the stretch. Those are two teams that they're feisty teams. And Arleta, especially, they've scheduled pretty decent in their non-league. So they're a team that if you sleep on them, they can come up and they can bite you. So it's going to be interesting the last couple of weeks of the season here to see how these teams finish up.
And, we're going from a couple of dogfights to looks to be some blowouts as far as league goes when we switch over to the girls' side. In the city section, West Valley, you've got another tight setup up top. Granada is 4-0 in league, 17-4 overall. And they've got a couple big matchups coming up. Taft 14-7, 3-1 in league. And Birmingham's right there too. 13-10, they're 3-2 in league. So with Birmingham, they've played with that one extra game, so they have a little less cushion in terms of trying to make up ground and maybe catch Granada up top. I don't think they're going to be able to do it. Taft and Granada have a chance to go head to head, and Granada's got a chance to lock up league, and Taft might be able to argue that they should have some say up there. Wrapping it down, El Camino's 4-14 and 1-2. This was a bit of a rebuilding year. They had a really, really kind of ominous start right before the season with the coaching change. That never really helps when you have to, bring in your program and start putting your system in place. 10 days before the season starts? It's rough, but they're hanging in there. Cleveland is 9-12 and 1-4, and then the Kenny's dark horse before the season. Chatsworth is 12-10 overall, which is a great sign. for their playoff future. They're 0-3 in league, and it kind of shows that they're getting there, but they're not quite at the level of your Birmingham Taft and Granadas. Over in the East Valley, Pauly has said this is our league and we're not giving it up. They're 15-5, 7-0 overall. Arleta, after a bit of a slow start, they're 11-13 overall, but they're 6-2 in league. That sixth win was a pretty impressive victory over Verdugo Hills. Speaking of, Verdugo's 14-8 overall and 5-2 in league, and suddenly what we thought would have been a league rematch coming up loses a little bit of luster. They could still make it interesting. We'll see what happens there. North Hollywood is still plugging in, really trying to make some noise. They're 10-9 overall, but again, they've played that extra game. They're 5-3 in league, so they don't have as much room to make up anything. Chavez is 3-15, 2-6. Grant is 3-8 and 2-6, and that's a very young team. We've talked about it a couple times, Kenny and I. And Monroe 0-10, 0-8. It's like we were saying, hopefully these kids can get something they can grow on and bring in the future seasons. And then Valley Mission, San Fernando's up on top, 18-3 and 8-0. Sylmar 9-3 overall, 5-3 in league. Kennedy is 9-10 overall, 5-3 in league. And Van Nuys is 11-11 overall, 5-3 in league. That middle cluster is really showing how even they are. And you could even throw Panorama as potentially, wanting to be in that discussion. They're 8-10 overall, 3-5. They've had a couple close games go against them. And Reseda is 3-10 overall, 1-7. Canoga's 1-10 and 1-7. Like you said, there's a couple runaways and a couple tight matchups. Kenny, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, starting in the West Valley, it's a 3-team gauntlet at the top. Birmingham is, unfortunately, after that loss to Taft this past Friday night, they're a little bit behind the 8 ball. They're really going to have to win out and get some help if they really want to win if they're going to win the league. But more importantly for Birmingham, with the loss to Taft and the loss to Granada in their back pocket, for them it goes beyond West Valley. For them, they have a team. They're a team that has designs on winning open, and losses to top teams like Taft and Granada that are also going to go open come playoff time could affect their seeding. So for them, when they see these two teams down the stretch, more importantly than even just winning the league, because that might be out of their control at this point, they're going to need those wins just for what it might mean for them for playoff time. In terms of Granada and Taft, we know what Granada is. They're really good. Mariam Boko is all that in the bag of chips in terms of, she's everything she's billed to be. But Taft is a sneaky team we're going to have to watch. They have, this is a different team now today than they were at the beginning of the year, and they've got a chance to make some noise come playoff time with the additions they've made to that team this year, with Bridget Bulletate in the middle, the 6'3", that 6'3" center who kind of controls things in the paint, and then they have a shifty point guard in Aaliyah Muhammad, who's kind of really turned the tide for that team and is making them a viable, it's not out of the realm of possibility they could kind of steal this league if things break that way. In the Valley Mission, it's a one team race. San Fernando's been awesome all year, 18-3, 8-0 in the league. They're the real deal. They're going to be a top team in D1. They might even slide in the open depending on how things just kind of shake out at the end of the year. Sylmar and Kennedy are probably, a step below them, but Kennedy is a team to watch. That team was 0-10, if you can believe it or not. They were 0-10 after they lost to San Fernando December 15th, and they haven't lost since. They've won 9 in a row, and they've got a shot to get back to 500 if they can knock off San Fernando this week. In the East Valley, yeah, it's Pauly's league to lose, but interesting in this league, when you look at the teams that are chasing them, is particularly a team like our leader, who is, their record is 11-13 overall. But if you look at the teams they've played this year and their 9 in their non-league, they've scheduled as tough as any team in the city section, and it's starting to bear its fruits. And you saw what they did against Verdugo last week and beating them, and they played Poly tough one, and it was a 5-point loss when they played Poly early this year, and they're getting ready to see them again. So that team, even if it's too late for them to win the league, they could be making noise. They could be setting up to make noise in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks beyond just the regular season into the playoffs. So now that's what it's looking like on from my perspective. These leagues, especially the Valley Mission and the East Valley, are all but wrapped up, but there's still some tough competition out there to be had the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and some of these teams that are not going to make their run and challenge for that league title because it's locked up basically, they still got playoff seeding to play for. I mean, you look at a team like Silmar, 9-3, probably not going to catch San Fernando, but they got a case to make for seeding. That's on the girls' side. You go look at the boys' side. You've got like in North Hollywood in the East Valley, they're 14-10 overall. They got a case to make to try to get good seeding. Verdugo Hills might be 10-12, but look at who they've played. They're trying to wrap up and do some seeding. Arleta, if they can shock the world, and knock off Grant, now they're all of a sudden looking for a little bit of help, and they might be able to do something. But they're 14-9. They've got designs on the playoffs. So there's plenty of it. Even a team like Cleveland, who's 8-13 on the boys' side, if they can make a little bit of noise, they might sneak into the playoffs. Yeah, be a lower seed on the road, but it's still a notch in your hat. You made the playoffs. You're moving in the right direction. Same thing on the girls' side. The Cleveland team is 9-12. The Chatsworth team is 12-10. They have designs. So these next couple weeks are going to be really, really big in terms of you have something to play for. You do. Just because you might not have a chance at league, you got a chance to make the playoffs and make some noise. So, but that's exciting there. Do a quick run up of the southern section. We'll start over in the Olympic League. Village and Heritage on both the boys and the girls side seem to be 1-2, and they are 1-2, but they seem to be the only teams in that race. Over on the boys side, Village is 20-4 overall, 3-1. Heritage is 15-7 overall, and they're also 3-1 in league. And they got a really big game coming up on the 31st. So that will essentially wrap up league for whoever wins. So circle that on your calendars, January 31st at Village. And then on the girls' side, Village is 17-5, 4-0 overall. Heritage is 13-9, 4-1. And that game on the 31st is a doubleheader. You got the girls going first, and the boys are capping it off. So if you want an exciting night of basketball, Village might be the place to be next Tuesday night on the 31st. I know we'll have a few people there. That'll be exciting for us. And then moving into the Mission League, that's the League of Death. Kenny and I were saying if this was like the World Cup or the Olympics, that's your group of death. On the boys' side, you got two of the top 5 teams in the state. Everybody knows Sierra Canyon. Don't need to give you anything about that. Harvard Westlake was the number 1 team coming in. They're still doing great, and so just got to keep rolling. Even moving down outside of that league, St. Jen is 12-11, 3-3. That's a team that has some designs on making noise into the playoffs. Kenny, you got some more on the boys' side in the southern section.
Yeah, like I said, the Mission League is a gauntlet. When you look at that league, there isn't a team in that league that doesn't have a record above 500. So what it tells you is The teams like Crespi and Alemany, who are 0-5 in the league, they're 0-5 in the league because they play in the Mission and they don't play in the Camino Real or the Gold Coast or the Santa Fe, where the competition probably wouldn't be as stiff. But when you play in the Mission League, when you get in the league, you're seeing Harvard Westlake every night. You're seeing Notre Dame. You're seeing St. Francis and Loyola and Chaminade. So a team like Crespi, if you saw them play Sierra Canyon last week, that wasn't a 40-point blowout. They were in that game. So they can play with these teams. So what it tells you is just about every team in the Mission standings is going to probably make the playoffs. They won't all be in the same division because there's kind of levels to it. But all of these teams could feasibly make noise when they get to the postseason just because of what they've had to endure going against each other all season. St. Genevieve deserves a little bit of credit just because this wasn't a year that I think anybody expected them to be as tough as they've been. And it's been up and down. It's been a struggle as it is for any team in the Southern section, but they're 3-3, they're 12-11, and they've got a shot to make a little bit of noise when they get into the playoffs. And other teams around the Southern section that we keep tabs on. A team like Calabasas has had a pretty decent year. They're kind of mid-pack in the Marmont, with tough teams like Thousand Oaks and Agora in front of them, but they've been pretty decent this year. And in the Olympic, it's a 2-team race between Heritage and Village. My money is on Village just because I think Heritage has a really tough stretch towards the end of the year, where I'm worried about them running out of gas. But it's still going to be fun watching these teams kind of finish up here and see how it shakes up in these leagues.
Yeah, and sports fans, just keep it tuned in because it's going to be exciting. Keep your ear to the ground. We're going to have some breaking news. We'll be tweeting as things are happening. If you're not following already, look for VS Graham Eric. He's always tweeting wherever he's at, and we try to get him out everywhere. Kenny's active on his socials. He's everywhere. Try to get him out as much as possible. So keep your eyes and ears open because there's going to be noise and we might have a couple upsets. It wouldn't surprise me either way. And then just kind of going to look as we move forward. We got 10 days left, maybe a little more for some of the teams that haven't played as many games. Kenny, I'm going to throw it to you. We'll do some predictions over here. And as we wrap it up, I'm going to start. We were just there, so I'm going to start in the Southern section. You kind of threw a prediction with Village taking the Olympic. How does the rest of that look out for you real quick before we jump into City?
In the Southern section, I do think that Village probably hangs on and takes the Olympic just because I think Heritage has a tough stretch to go. When you look at the Mission League, it's still anybody's race when you look at Harvard, Westlake, Sierra Canyon, and Notre Dame. The funny thing with those three teams, I think, is going to come down to health. Like I said, if you're following, Sierra Canyon, and they were a lot of people's picks to maybe take that league over a tough Harvard Westlake team, but they seem to be struggling a little bit with injuries, the Bronny and some of the kids on that team. So I think Harvard Westlake probably walks away with the Mission, but that's not a slight to Sierra Canyon and Notre Dame. Those three teams will probably make deep runs in the playoffs just because of just how good those teams have been, especially with those two, Sierra Canyon and Harvard Westlake, more importantly, being top 5 programs in the state. And even in terms of like the Gold Coast, I wish Campbell Hall had gotten off to a bit of a better start in league because they're kind of out of it. But Campbell Hall, if you've seen them play at all this year, that 14-9 is legit. That's a team you're not going to want to see in the first game out when you get to the playoffs because they can and they do have the ability to play with anybody and they can beat you. And that's about it on the southern section side for me in terms of our teams that we kind of care about. Calabasas is dangerous as well. They won't win their league. They're too far behind Thousand Oaks and Agora, but that's a team that's going to make the playoffs, and you're not going to want to play them.
That's kind of the story there in the southern section. Teams are going to make playoffs, and you don't want to see them. Regardless of whether they won their league or not, there's some dangerous teams out there coming out of the valley, and good luck if you draw them in the first round, because there's going to be some dogfights. We'll slide back over into the city section, and we'll go Valley, Mission, East, and West, kind of in that order. Mainly because on the boys' side, we've got that three-headed monster with Kennedy, Canoga, and Silmar all at the top. I am really, really kind of surprised by the Kennedy team. I wasn't really expecting that much. But they're out and they're making a case that they're going to stay on top. What do you think about when you look at the Valley Mission?
Yeah, I think ultimately it's going to probably be a 2-horse race there. Silmar is also in the pack, and if things break right for them at 6-2 in that league, maybe they could kind of end up on top. But I think that they're just a step below where Kennedy and Canoga Park is. My prediction for the Valley Mission standings is I'm going to go with Canoga Park. I think that they've been a stronger, more consistent team this season. I think Kennedy has had a great run here in the second half. That 13-11 record is legit, but I just think Canoga Park, when all is said and done, I think that they are the team that's going to survive that gauntlet.
And that's going to be one hell of a gauntlet too, though. Just the way it rounds out. And then jumping into the East Valley, like we said, it looks like Grant is running away with this thing. Arleta is 6-2, potentially, but I don't think anything's going to happen. I think Grant is going to hold on. They're going to take it. They've been too dangerous as far as what they're doing, and they've got that point guard, and he's hitting from 25. 26 feet, like NBA level, just pull up and shoot. So they are not going to relinquish that lead, I don't think. And I do see, though, you look at Arleta, Verdugo, and North Hollywood, maybe even Chavez, they're 10-13 overall. These are playoff teams. How much noise are they going to make? There's some feisty ball playing played. They're aggressive and they don't give up. So we're gonna see, quite a few playoff teams coming out of the East Valley, and that's gonna be fun to watch.
Yeah, and all I have to add to that is it's Grant's league. They haven't just been the best team in the East Valley. They've been one of the best teams in the city this year. And they've played competition that lets you know that they believe that they are one of the best teams in the city, and they've kind of scheduled like a team that's going to make noise beyond league and into the playoffs. So it's their league. Like you said, Arleta, Verdugo, North Hollywood, these teams all the way down to Chavez, these teams are probably going to be in the playoffs. What they'll do in the playoffs will all depend on where they land. It's the luck of the draw at that point, but there are some feisty teams, so we'll see. But it's definitely Grant's league.
And we'll step right into another dogfight. We mentioned it at the top of the show. Over in the West Valley, Birmingham and Taft, and that overtime game was intense. So much so that it got a little physical, and I'm gonna call it out here. The tweet, chaos breaks out. I don't need to name who tweeted that out, but you got to make sure you're there if you're going to talk about chaos breaking out. And we had 2 people there, and this was just a hard fought game, league implications, 2 rivals just giving everything they had. Shook hands at the end of the game. No bad blood. But I guarantee you when they run it back, it's going to be just as intense. Because this time you've got Taft believing they should have won. And Birmingham wanting to prove that, no, they earned that win. They deserved it. Um, and that will be major as far as who's going to take that league right there. Uh, and even looking down, coming out of this league, there's going to be a bunch of playoff teams. Out of the six, you could argue that 4 or 5, if not all of them, deserve a spot in the playoffs. How low they get seeded, where they get seeded, again, that all depends. But yeah, it's going to be intense coming out of here.
Yeah, in terms of the West Valley, it is a 2-team race. Birmingham and Taft are a step above the other teams in the West Valley, and that's saying something because it's a tough league. You take any of those teams behind Birmingham and Taft and stick them in the Valley Mission or stick them in the East Valley, they're probably right there at the top of the standings just because of the talent that just kind of permeates through the West Valley with those big charter schools. But what's interesting about how the West Valley is going to end up is a lot of it obviously depends on the Birmingham and Taft rematch that's coming up soon. And at Taft, if Taft can win that game, then the league hinges really on El Camino and Cleveland. Can one of those teams upset the apple cart and knock off one of those two teams, which is possible because, like I said, there's talent abound. That game against Cleveland that Taft played last week, Cleveland was in that game until the mid-third quarter, and then it kind of got away from them. So these teams that are chasing Birmingham and Taft can play with them. If you don't come with your best effort, you might find yourself on the end of a 3-point loss because these teams can get hot and make shots and beat you. So this league, the West Valley, might come down to if one of these teams slips up and has a lapse in concentration or is looking ahead, that might be the difference in you getting your second loss in the West Valley and then losing. So it's going to be competitive all the way down to the end. It's a tough league, but if I had to pick someone, I think I'm going to go with Taft. I just think Taft is probably the best quality team there. I think they had opportunities to beat Birmingham the other night, and they just didn't finish the game. And I think but either way, it's going to be a dogfight.
So from one dogfight to another, shaping up like it's going to be a tight finish. And I'm going to stay in the West Valley this time. Granada Hills is on top. These girls have been making noise all season. They're 17-4, and they're 4-0 in league. And I mean, Taft and Birmingham are right there. Birmingham actually wasn't able to seal the deal against Granada Hills. And so they probably a step below in terms of trying to take that league. But they're set up really nicely for a playoff run. But yeah, Taft and Granada coming down to the end of the wire. That's going to be it when they face each other right now.
Yeah, the West Valley, it's just tough. I mean, literally, when you throw Granada Hills, Taft, and Birmingham in together, it's rock, paper, scissors at this point in terms of who can beat who on any given night. Granada Hills is just a polished team. They're just hard to beat. If you don't come with your A game, which Taft already found out, and which Birmingham found out, that if you slip up, if you have a lapse in concentration, the way they shoot the 3-ball, the way they defend together, the way they move the ball makes it really hard to beat that team, makes them one of the favorites to win the Open Championship. But Taft is right there. They have inside presence. They have an outside game. They can beat you on any given night as well. And despite being 3-2 in that league, Birmingham has got some very, very talented players. Natalie Lopez is a dog out there. Devin Berry is one of the smoothest players in the entire city section. They have guards who can shoot it from the outside. So Birmingham is still as dangerous as can be. If Taft or Granada are not to take it for granted, they can get beat by this team. So there's still a lot to be decided in this league, and it's going to be very fun down the stretch. And don't forget about El Camino and Cleveland, because despite El Camino being 4-14, what's really been weird watching this team down the stretch is you would think that in those sort of situations, a team like that would just kind of fold into tents. But the remnants of that championship team from Division I that are still there, they're still fighting and they're still playing hard, and they're in these games down the stretch. So that 4-14 almost feels a bit like a false 4-14. If you don't come with your best effort, you can get beat, as Taft almost found out a week ago when they played El Camino. So Yeah, it's a tough league, and it's still a lot to be decided, and it's going to be exciting.
And the exciting finishes just continue. This week, from when we're recording, Poly's got a couple of matchups over in the East Valley League. They're 7-0, 15-5. The Lasing Twins, I mean, we've said it. They are the heart and soul of this program. They carry the team, and they make it so. This team is as amazing as it is when you look at it. They've got a couple other, I'll say, secondary weapons that are hard to stop. So this team is undersized, but they bring the fight. And this is a team that's going to, making a lot of noise, and it looks like they're going to be D1. So that's going to be an interesting watch. Like I said, Arlita's right there, right behind them. They're 6-2. Verdugo Hills is 5-2. So I don't really think either one is going to catch them. Doesn't look like it. But it's going to be an interesting stretch as they prepare for the playoffs and how these two teams try to position themselves as, well, we couldn't beat them in the regular season, but we're using them to get ready for this big playoff run. We'll see what happens there. Even North Hollywood, they're sneaky. This is a team that, if you're not ready, will drop some points on you, and they'll shut you down defensively. That's their big thing, is North Hollywood will shut you down defensively if you're not ready or paying attention. And so that league is going to be interesting to watch down the stretch.
Yeah, and in terms of the East Valley, here's what's really interesting about the East Valley. It's Poly's league to win. They've got a 2-game lead in the stand. They've got a 2.5 game lead in the standings on the teams that are chasing them. But that's only a part of the story. The bigger story with the top of this league is there's a bit of a chess match that has to happen down the stretch with these 3 teams at the top. Verdugo is sitting in 3rd place, but that number 3 is interesting because that's how many championships, city championships, they're sitting on. So you can't sleep on the experience when you have Nicole Venegas and Mariah Mbachu and some of these players who have been here, done this, and they know how to turn it on when the postseason comes. Arlita, as bad as the season began for them, or as up and down as it was, it might have had a little bit to do with the competition, but they are as feisty and tenacious as a team that you will find in the entire section. Poly knows this full firsthand because they barely beat them the first time they played. And Arlita, what they did to Verdugo Hills on the boards last week, 55 rebounds, 4 girls with double-figured rebounds. That's a team that's going to come after you. They're going to fight you tooth and nail for everything. So any of these 3 teams beyond just the league, you're not going to want to see them come playoff time. So that's what's really interesting. And like you said, North Hollywood, tough defensive team, and they have a weapon that a lot of schools don't have. A 6'3" girl right in the middle who's really is more of, it's not even a center. She's more of a stretch 3-4 the way she wants to play. So she can score inside, but she can score outside. She can handle the ball. That's a weapon that's going to be tough for teams to deal with come postseason time. So it's going to be exciting to see what these teams do.
And that leads us to the last one on the girls' side in the Valley Mission League. We've said it. This is San Fernando's league. I don't see them giving it up. This coaching staff has had a city title in their crosshairs from, the summer when they were looking at how they were going to put it together. It was city title or bust. And on the way to that city title, looks like they're wrapping up a league title. But again, you look at that second tier right behind them, and you got 3 5-3 teams in league. Sylmar, Kennedy, and Van Nuys. And these are teams that are looking to position themselves for playoffs. Sylmar's 9-3, Kennedy's 9-10, Van Nuys is 11-11. And all 3 of these teams can make something happen when they get in. Sylmar for the longest time looked like they were going to be a tough battle for San Fernando. Unfortunately, when they faced them, they didn't really put up that kind of fight that you thought they were going to give. But still, this team is one that can handle itself if you're not ready to go. Same can be said for Kennedy. So, but it's going to be an interesting setup as this league winds down and those three teams are trying to position themselves for playoffs.
Yeah, it's San Fernando's league. San Fernando's been, like I said, like just reiterating what I said earlier, they've been awesome. 18 wins so far this season. The only team in the San Fernando Valley that can boast having more wins than San Fernando is Sierra Canyon, and we know what they are. So to even be mentioned in that kind of conversation in terms of how much winning you've done is an amazing feat in itself. Now for San Fernando, there's some questions about the level of competition they played all year, and it's going to be ratcheted way up when they get to playoff time. So, we cross our fingers that we're ready for that because we're rooting for all of our Valley teams to kind of go as far as they can in the playoffs. So we'll see when they get there. A lot of questions will be answered when they get to the postseason. But like you said, with Sylmar, Kennedy, Van Nuys, these are three teams. Sylmar hasn't played as many games as everybody else, but they've played well in the contest they have had, and Kennedy and Van Nuys have kind of figured some things out along the way. And even a team like Van Nuys is dangerous because of some of the teams they played. They played in a tournament earlier this year where they went and played a bunch of savage teams from Kentucky. They took their lumps, but you're going to learn some things about yourself playing and scheduling that way. So these are all teams that are going to be dangerous come playoff time.
Yeah, they are. And that leads us to kind of our wrap up as we're looking ahead. We've got those ideas of what's going to happen, and we're going to keep a close eye on it because this is crunch time. This is winning time, and it's when you really set yourself up for what you're going to do in the playoffs. Do you limp in and hope for something to happen, or do you charge in and expect to make things happen? There's two ways to do it. And we've got a few teams that are going to charge in, I believe. Hoping we don't have too many that limp in.
Yeah, and just to show a little bit of love to to our sort of second tier or our smaller our leagues with the smaller teams. The Valley League has also been very interesting on both the boys and the girls side, and talking about that down the stretch. For both leagues, there are big matchups. On the girls' side, there's one coming up right now with Vaughn and Northridge Academy battling it out for that league title. Vaughn has never won the Valley League, and Northridge has had their grips on it, and Vaughn has got a real shot this year with their team to kind of wrestle that league away from Northridge. So that'll be interesting to watch. And on the boys' side, it's been Northridge Academy and Sochus all season long as being 1 and 2 in that league. And that league might very well, if both teams handle business, come down to the last game of the season when the two teams play each other. Everything could be on the line there. So just to show some love to those little teams and to those smaller schools and those in that league, we see you guys as well, and we know that you guys are fighting hard and looking to make some noise come playoff time in yourselves in whatever divisions you land in. So it's going to be interesting. It's definitely going to be interesting down the stretch, and like you said, cross our fingers everybody gets there healthy. We see who will be the last teams left standing with these leagues, and then hopefully everybody can go into the postseason healthy and ready to make a run.
And with that, thank you everybody for watching. This is not the last one. We said at the end of football season, we're still coming. We're still putting them out. Make sure you follow us, valleysportstelegram.com, at VST_media on all our socials, Instagram, Twitter. We're building that TikTok. It's getting there. I got to say, though, TikTok, get your stuff together. Let us post these 4K videos. If they had let us post some 4K videos, we would have had a bunch of more videos. I just got to say that. But yeah, throughout all the socials, at VST_media. Follow us, like, subscribe. We're over here bringing in as much news as we can, trying to cover the Valley and blanket it as best as we can.